so much of information that we are lacking of basic life skills. It's astounding to me how we're not turning out, people who feel like they're ready for life. I don't feel like I was ready for life with calculus and algebra. I mean, I wish I knew how to build a house, check my furnace, and do my taxes.
Oh, yeah. You and me both. Yeah, in terms of what you were just talking about, the $1 million question, should I do an LLC or an S-Corp?
Yeah.
I can, well, because you're my CPA, what a huge difference that made for me. And this is coming I have actually a lot to share on that topic. Guys, just so you know, we're going to go into a lot more detail on this particular question in terms of the right entity for you and your business. We go into a lot more detail with Deepa in the 6-Figure Biz Academy because it's one of those questions, right, Deepa, that you can't really, like in a public forum like this, you can't really go into as much detail as we can do, for example, in the academy. But this is a pivotal, absolutely critical decision. And I can definitely speak from experience, coming off, before I met Deepa, I was coming off of a year where I owed a whole bunch of money for taxes. It came out of nowhere. I had no idea. I mean, I suppose I, should have known, right? But I didn't. I didn't know. And it was really quite a big, not a pleasant surprise, right? And then I met with Deepa and we took a look at my entity and made some changes. And wow, what a difference it's made in terms of savings, right? I mean, really, really significant. So, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, so some of these decisions are legal as well. So we always work together. I always work with an attorney because I want the attorney to give you the legal advice. What I can talk about is to the tax aspects of it. So when it comes to taxes, we talk about flexibility of entity. Like just because you have an LLC or an S-Corp, it's not the end. Like you haven't done what you need to do. That's the beginning, right? Okay. So even the decision on LLC or S-Corp, that's something you have to discuss with your attorney and your accountant and then come to a combined decision. And then once you have that in place, the attorney kind of steps out of the picture because their job is done. Now you and I are going to talk about your taxes because that's an every year thing. Sometimes that's an every month thing. And so what we want to do is we want to figure out which is the right tax situation for you. And then what are your goals? Like, do you want to retire in 2 years? Are you going to work for the next 40? Like, if you've got that kind of thought through, then we can do what you want. For example, I'll just give you some examples. Once I got a 32-year-old client come to me and she goes, I want to put the maximum money in my 401k. I don't care about anything else. Wonderful. Then guess what? We picked the right entity for that. We set that up for her, and we made sure she got her $55,000 inside of her entity before we talked about anything else. And we got that done and she was on the launch model, so we got that done pretty quickly. And then we talked about other things. And so then there's another client who came to me and said, I want to set up 10 locations. I don't want to talk about anything else until I have 10 locations of my company. Great. So then you have to accumulate cash. You've got to have banks on your side to give you credit. So, everybody's situation is different. But when you know where you're going, then the tax strategy can be put in place to help you, right? Mm-hmm. So, and sometimes when people don't have that clear direction, they just want to work with people. They just want to serve people. They want to impart their knowledge and help people. And I kind of give them a roadmap. Like, you can go down this path. It's never going to fail you because, it gets you to a certain destination where you have wealth, savings, everything put together. And then sometimes they just end up choosing that path. And so, there's 100 things you can do, but it's individualized. It's tailored. So when I'm talking to somebody, I like to see who they are, know who they are. And so inside your academy, it's perfect because we have a small group and they get to ask me questions and I can turn back and say, okay, tell me, are you married? Do you have kids? is, and then you can give them kind of a little bit more tailored advice, which is then what's going to really, create those massive savings for them.
Yeah. And I do remember in last year's, in 2021's cohort,
yeah,
pretty significant changes that were made to save money on taxes as a result of your workshop. So
I remember I remember that call so well, because there were people on that call that were like, well, this is unacceptable. There was so much of outrage at the lack of advice they were receiving. So I remember that call so well. They were
I remember it like it was yesterday, because that was me too, right? Like I had just gone through that whole like shock. And so I really do understand how and I do recall you saying that, like it's a bell-shaped curve pretty much. Not all accountants, not all CPAs are comfortable in recommending alternative entities, right? It's just not really in their wheelhouse. So, and that really was my situation. My CPA back then, I mean, we've been using the same person. He's, great guy, right? But clearly was not comfortable in recommending kind of a more innovative approach to help me meet my goals. So, so it's different.
True. That's true. And these are a lot of my colleagues. So I know I attend seminars with them. So I know, like, just the personal income tax code can fill up a room. If you printed it out, it could fill up this room, because it's such a big thing. So a lot of people don't want to step outside that. But if you have an LLC and S-Corp, you're now deep in the world of corporate taxes and corporate accounting. So because it takes two skills, right? Like you can be just a tax preparer and just do individual taxes. You don't need a second skill set. But if you're doing business taxes, you need to do taxes and you need to know how to do accounting. So you need two skill sets. And so a lot of people won't give you those LLC S-Corp type of strategies because they don't have a specific skill set. And so, like I said, my balance sheet reading, my early on balance sheet reading, it really helped me because I love that part of it. I love looking at financial statements and telling you what your business is saying to me. Because I don't run your business. I don't know what's going on. But I do, I can look at your accounting statements and go, the business is telling me this. Are you feeling that? Like, are you feeling a cash shortage right now? Or did you have a really good year, but you found out that all your money went away in contract labor? Like, I can tell you all of that, and you can nod your agreement because it says so here, even though it may not have crystallized in your thought process. Your thought process may have been, well, where's all my money this year? But then your financial statements will tell me exactly where it went and why you're feeling that pinch. So then you can go and make some changes. And, so in that sense, it's efficient for running your business as well. And a lot of accountants don't have that training. A lot of tax preparers don't have that training. So you do have to go. The word CPA it includes a lot of people. But if you go to a CPA generally, they will be able to give you the LLC strategies in addition to the personal income tax strategies. And that's where you're going to succeed.
Okay. That's fascinating. So the numbers definitely don't lie.
They don't. Oh, I'm telling you, when I do tax returns and my balance sheet doesn't tie, I know that there's something that I haven't looked at, and fair enough. I go into the ledger, I look, there's something in last May that didn't make sense to me, I didn't address, and that's my balance sheet doesn't tie. It doesn't lie. Like when I'm done with that tax return, everything balances, it's good to go. Like it's correct. It's also why S-Corps don't get audited that much, because there's so many checks and balances.
Yeah.
But I love it because once I'm done with the return, I know pretty much it's straightforward. The only thing we have to worry about is, did you deduct too much from meals and entertainment, or, and I'm going to point that out to you and be like, yeah, well, for this revenue, you probably shouldn't be having this. So I'll point that out to you as we go along.
So let's go back to all these years, you working with, especially with women, right? What do you think are some ways to handle money better? Do you have any recommendations?
I do. So thanks for asking that, because what I realized when I worked so this came to me one day when I was driving. Okay, so all my insights come to me when I'm driving. One day I'm driving along. Like a lot of people have their insights in the shower. For me, it's driving. So I'm driving somewhere, and it was a long drive, and I realized that we have no role models for money, right? And if you we're constantly coming up against things like Bridgerton and stuff. For we know the Victorian era, like Downton Abbey, we see what life was like back then. Women who were respected were supposed to be at leisure. Think about it, Leslie. Women were supposed to be at leisure, okay? And if you worked, you were in the outskirts of society. You were the housekeeper, or you were the maid, or worse, you were probably someone's mistress. That's the only way you earned money. So money was bad. It had no status, and it was almost considered a dirty thing for women to have, because being at leisure was what made you respectable, right? So we have generations of this in our DNA. So we have to fight big barriers just to get to handling money as a normal, acceptable thing, right? So that's one. We're fighting a lot of inner wars in order to earn money. By the time we're done fighting that war and we come actually into money management, we're tired. We are so tired. We don't want to be bothered with it, because just earning the money by itself is a big deal. We've worked very hard to do it. So now come spending it, saving it, investing it, we kind of let it go. We kind of drop the ball there. And that's where we need the men in our life, literally. And that's what happened. We needed the men in our life to come and help us manage it. What I'm telling women now is that we've gotten past a big barrier. We've entered the workforce in large quantities. We are good at spending. We can be so good at spending. We can be so good at saving. We can be so good at investing. Let's start trying to think of those as normal, natural things to do, like eating and breathing. And let's try to make those natural, because most of the people I work with did not have good money conversations at home. Like, think about when you grew up, for example. Did you get told money doesn't grow on trees? You know, all those cliches. Like that's what we grew up with. Well, we've overcome a lot of that. We are earning money. Now let's make talking about it normal. Let's make getting advice about it something that you don't have to be ashamed about. Because I feel like we feel a lot of shame tied around money, and we have to overcome that. If we do overcome that and normalize talking about it, there's so much of freedom around that. And there's so much of liberation for women around that.
Yeah. You know, I can say in my own upbringing, now I was lucky because I have a dad who's an entrepreneur. So, you know, so I grew up in that kind of environment. However, talking about money was really stressful. It was like, I remember it was like, oh, when he said, you know, come on downstairs, we need to talk. It was like, oh my God, horrible. Like it just, and it always was so stressful.
So you have that stress tied around money.
I do.
But look at you. You overcame that. You have a really successful business right now. So once you're done with that, you're tired. You're like, I don't know if I want to bother about the rest of the stuff. No, you can't. You can be really good at it. Like,
Oh, yeah. It's totally, you can absolutely move beyond it. I think awareness is really the first step, right? You gotta just kind of like embrace, you know, how you were raised, and really begin to recognize in many ways how that kind of held you back a little bit, right? So
totally. Which is why I encourage, like, you need more of you and me out there, because I encourage women to come and talk to me, because I get it. Listen, I went through all the same things you went through, right? I've had blocks around money. I overcame them. And getting my business off the ground was tough, but I overcame it. Like, you have to, like, if you try talking to a man about money, they have such a different way of going about it. They are so comfortable with it. They're so logical about it. They're so objective. They can make decisions with so much objectivity, but we're emotional beings. We're emotional creatures. So for me, making a buying decision is all about emotion. Where my husband thinks about interest rates. So I think we should refinance our mortgage because the interest rate dropped 0.5%. And I'm like, finance our money. Oh my God, that's so much work. He's like, no, it's just, let's just do. He's just so comfortable with that topic. Whereas for me, I'm like, not as comfortable yet. And I'm an accountant and a money coach, and I'm still not comfortable with it. So, there's that. So that's why you need to talk to more women.
Yeah.
And we women need to make these conversations more
mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have groups that support one another, right? Like,
absolutely.
That are, groups of women that are basically doing what you want to do.
Exactly. We're collaborators by default. We do well in groups.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so, it's so helpful. So, I wanted to ask you, before we jumped on and pushed the live button, you had mentioned a little bit about what you call the tax trap.
Yes.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what that is and what the implications are.
Yeah, sure. So most of the women who talk to me or come to me do not have a problem with earning at this point. They've broken through that barrier. Okay, like yourself. You never had a problem with earning. But what happens is when we're on the launch model, for example, and we have these big launches, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 launches, and we suddenly get there with not making too much money in the past, we don't know what to do exactly. Like there's no step-by-step on what to do with that money once you have it. So the last thing people think about is taxes. So what happens is the following year, when it comes time to file your taxes, you're suddenly hit with a 5-digit tax bill, 10,000, 20,000. I've seen 60 and 70,000 a lot. And so that you don't find out the year you earn that money, you find out the following year when you're filing your taxes. So what happens is you don't have that 60,000 on hand. Chances are you've used it to buy a house, pay off some other debt. You've used it already. So what happens is you take money out of this year to pay last year's tax bill. Well, guess what? You haven't paid this year's tax bill yet. And that moves on to next year. And now you've got yourself into this loop that I call the tax trap. Like it just keeps trapping you year after year, and you can't get ahead because you're always paying taxes.